Oh, people, do you hear me? Are we here? Hello, folks. I hope you're there. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, people, do you hear me? Well, I'm going anyway. How on earth are you doing, you crazy rock and rollers? And welcome to this live stream. We're now doing tutorials by request. Somebody had requested that I do a tutorial on module relations. So I'm going to cover that. I'm going to cover table joins as well. I had actually recorded this. It took me about half an hour, actually, yeah, about 35 minutes. And then I thought, oh, do I need to edit this now? And it takes ages. And I just decided I cannot be bothered editing this thing. So I'm just going to do it live. And I think this is how I think this is probably how I'm going to do tutorials from now on, if I'm doing tutorials in the future. And maybe I won't, maybe I'll stop doing tutorials, I don't know. Anyway, we're going to be covering how to join modules in this tutorial here. You'll know that the Trongate desktop app has got a few things that deal with module relations, so you're going to be an expert at all of that by the end of this. And we're also going to cover table joins, and that includes just custom table joins. They're kind of one and the same, but I want you to have complete control over everything that we're doing here. So that's what's on the agenda. Shall we dance? Oh, people, do you hear me? Shall we dance? All right. How are you doing, Keith? It's good to see you. Now, for anyone who's a member of the channel, it's Friday. I'm going to do this tutorial, then I'm heading out for a short while, but I'm going to be live streaming tonight, probably up until about 1:30 in the morning. So there's going to be a late stream tonight. Let's call it an America-friendly live stream. But this one is for anyone. So, shall we dance? I hope you can see the screen. Ahoy to you, Dirty Mint. It's ahoy to Keith. So, let's get going. Now, this was my practice run, but we're not going to bother with a practice run. We are going to be starting with the Trongate desktop app here. Now, keep in mind, the design of this is changing, so your app may look different from this one, but we're going to have the same functionality. So, however it looks, click on Create New App, and I'm going to call this one YouTube Tutorial. Now, I'm going to go quite quick here because I assume that you know about this stuff. So setting a base URL, setting a database, choosing a location, and it's inside htdocs. Now, I'm using XAMPP. XAMPP is a free download, of course, and that means that I've got PHP, MySQL, and all of that stuff up and running on my computer here. So here's the default holding page that we get. Now, again, the design may have changed by the time that you watch this. Holding pages or default home pages, they'll change designs from time to time. It's no big deal, but hopefully you've got some sort of website up and running. Now, let's get straight back to the desktop app, and I'm going to create a new module. And this new module, well, I'm going to write student. That's the singular, right? So let's click submit. Manage students. We're not going to bother with an icon, and I'm going to add 3 properties. I'm going to have a variable character of first name. I'm going to have a variable character of last name, and I'll have an email field which I will call email address. There you go. Now keep in mind, folks, you can click into these and change the validation values or whatever. So we could say max length 65, for example. It's as easy as that. I'll just make sure you can see the screen. Can we see the screen okay? I hope that's working. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I like the Sega Mega Drive look. Well, thank you, Keith. Although it was actually based on a Commodore 64. Anyway, here we go. Let's do this. We're going to submit. And we're not going to bother with a URL column here. I'll show you what that means in a minute. But we'll order by ID ascending. So generate new module. And here we go. So we now have a new module, okay? And if we go to our database, right here, you'll see that if I scroll down, here's YouTube tutorial, and here is an entire database that has just been created, complete with a students table. Now, I'm going to open this up in my text editor because there's something that I'd like to do. So it's going to be inside HD Docs, YouTube tutorial, and there it is right there. Now, I'm going to, in just a second, start creating student records. But if I click on this, I'm going to get all sorts of autocompletes and stuff, and it can be a little bit embarrassing, you know, when you find out about my private life and how dull it all is. So I'm going to go into the Students module, Views, Create, and here are the form fields, right? So you see how that says first name. If I say first name ahoy, save it, refresh, do you see how it says first name ahoy here? So this is what we're dealing with. Now, this is a form field being drawn, and it's passing in some properties. I am going to pass in, just for the tutorial, autocomplete assigned to off. Okay, autocomplete assigned to off. I'm going to do that for all of these and save. So that means that when I click here, everything is cool and I don't get any miserable autocompletes appearing. Now, let's add some records. I'm going to have Brian, well, actually, we'll start with Arthur, shall we? We'll say Arthur Ashtown, and his email address is going to be arthur at something.com. Okay, let's create another record. We'll have Brian Bronson. Very powerful name, wouldn't you say? And that's going to be Brian at something.com. Okay, so these are student records we're creating. We're going to have Colin Caldwell, whose email address is going to be colin at something.com. Okay, so no big deal. I've created 3 student records, and of course, if I go to the database here, quickly browse, there are the records. Nothing here should be too surprising to anyone. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make another new module. This module is a new Trongate module, and I'm going to say passport. And we'll make this super, super quick. I never meant to choose that. Never mind. I've accidentally given it an icon. Doesn't matter. All right. But the passports are going to have a variable character of passport number. All right. Now, we won't bother with a URL column. We'll order by ID and generate. Good. Now, if I click into this, I'm going to now add some passport records here. Now, by the way, do you see my autocomplete? That's what I was getting rid of when I did this autocomplete off. So when you don't do autocomplete, it's going to do something like this. But this actually suits me. So I'm going to very quickly just make up 3 random passport numbers, right? Super quick. I know that I'm going quick, but you can pause the video and all of that stuff. So there we go. We have some students. We have some passports. Do you remember how I added an icon accidentally? You can see it over on the left there. If that's really bothering you, you can open up dynamic nav.php and then just take it out or change it. You see, it's as simple as that. All right. Now, the reason why I created a students module and a passports module is because these are classic textbook examples of modules or tables that would typically have what's called a one-to-one relationship. That means that we would usually associate one, well, not usually, we would always associate, I'm just up, we would associate one student record with one passport, right? One passport with one student. Never do you get a student with more than one passport unless they're in the EU, where they don't believe in border control anymore. But let's not get political. I'm only kidding, you know. Anyway, it's the wrong crowd for these types of jokes. Right, let's let's make a one-to-one relationship. So we're going to click back on the desktop app, a module relation. This is going to be a one-to-one relationship. It's going to ask me to choose module A. Now you can choose any one that you like. I'm just going to choose students, doesn't matter. Let's choose module B. It's going to be passports. And it's going to ask, would you like to create a bridging table for this relationship? I'm going to say yes, and in a minute, I'll show you exactly what that means. Now, it's asking for a first module identifier column. What this means is, if I present a record to you and I say, hey, would you like to assign 3 to 7? It might not be meaningful. But if I say, hey, would you like to assign Brian to this passport? Well, you know what that means, right? So I'm going to have an identifier column of first name. For the second module, the identifier column is going to be passport number. There we go. So let's generate a module relation. Okay, so it's doing its thing. And there we go. I'm going to head over to the students module now. And if we click in, you can see that we've got a whole new thing that has been added here. It says associate with passport. If I click on it, here's our list of passports. Now I'll associate with this first one here. There you go. And you'll notice, I'll zoom back a bit. You'll notice that I'm not able to associate with anything else because it's 1 to 1. And sure enough, if I go to another student record, try to associate with a passport, can you see how that passport is no longer available? And by the way, if we go to passports, let's click into one of these. Do you see how the passport is now associated with the student? It's actually quite a lot going on behind the scenes, you know, but it all just works. We can disassociate, do anything that makes you feel good, but this, my friend, is what's called a one-to-one relationship. Now let's have a look at the database and see what's happening there. We'll head back into our database. You'll remember that we said we would like a bridging table. So a bridging table is a table that joins students and passports. You can see that we've got a table called Associated Students and Passports. And here it is. This was all created automatically. Now, to give you a visual representation of what's happening here, I'm going to open up the query builder. And if we take students, which was our first table, passports, the bridging table is like this. You see, it's like a bridge and it joins the ID of students here. Oh, I'm all over the place. Anyway, it joins that to, not to that thing, but to the passports like so. That's how this one works, okay? So it's the bridging table that connects these two tables. And the advantage of this is that it means that we don't have to modify either the students table or the passports table. So there you go. Now, we'll have a closer look at the query builder later on. But in the meantime, I'd like to create another new module, a new Trongate module. I'm going to call this one Matric Card. When I was at uni, they had matriculation cards. It's your student cards, you know, gives you access to the library and stuff like that. We're going to call it a matric card here, and we're going to make a module like that. It's going to be very similar, no icon, pretty much the same as passports. So we're going to say variable character, and I'll say matric number, like this, exactly the same ID as passports, no URL column, and we'll order by ID ascending. Now, once again, we have a new module. Let's quickly create a few records. I did a test earlier on, so I'm going to just say ABC123. This is a student card, basically, right? ABC456 and ABC789, okay? So that shouldn't be too confusing. Sure enough, over on the database, we do indeed have matric cards here. Now, I'm going to create a module relation. I'm going to do a one-to-one. Module A will go with students again. Module B will go with matric cards. Would you like to create a bridging table? And by the way, sometimes they're called pivot tables. This time we'll say no. It's going to ask for the first module identifier column. I will go with first name. It's going to ask for the second module identifier column. I'll go with matric number, and we'll generate that module relation. So this is still a one-to-one relationship, but the difference is now if we click into a record and we update details, you'll see that we have a drop down with associated matriculation card. We choose and we submit, and you can see that that's slightly different, right? That's different from the way that this worked in the past. If we look at matriculation cards and update, associated student, same idea, right? It's slightly different. From a database perspective, what has happened here is we've got matric cards, and as you can see, when we made a relationship, we added in a column called students ID. And when we look at the students table, we've now got matric cards ID. It takes the table name, matric cards, and it adds underscore ID. So it's still a one-to-one relationship. But if we were representing this visually, unlike passports, where we have a bridging table, this relationship is more like this. It's more direct, you see. Or, if you prefer, like this. Something like that. Now, by the way, I should say, you don't even need to use this module relations thing. It's just optional and it's no big deal. Let's do another module relation. In fact, let's do another module. I'm going to create a new Trongate module called teacher. And we'll have manage teachers, no navigation icon. And again, we'll go with a variable character of first name and last name. Now, if you think about students and teachers from a database perspective, we'll have no URL column, by the way. I'll order by ID ascending and generate. Okay. So if you think about this, think about like a university or something. A student will be assigned to different classes or different teachers, and a teacher will have lots of students. So one student can have lots of teachers. One teacher can have lots of students. So unlike the passport thing that was a one-to-one, this is a many-to-many, because we can have many students assigned to many teachers. You get the idea, okay? So let's view our module, and we're going to quickly create some teacher records. Again, just for the purposes of being decent, I'm going to add in these autocomplete empty fields here. Just for the tutorial, you don't need to do that, but I'll do it here. Autocomplete off, rather. That's what we do. Okay, save and close. So what this means, we can now add records. So let's have Sarah Samsworth. I have no idea what I'm doing. We'll do female names for the teachers in our ongoing efforts to always be inclusive. Let's have Helen back, and let's have Karen Carpenter. Why not? It's about time we spoke about Karen Carpenter. Have I spelled that right? One of the best female singers ever. Anyway, these are teachers. Little standalone module. No surprises, and there it is. So let's create a many-to-many relationship with teachers and with students. I'm going to choose relationship type. So this time it's many-to-many. Module A. Now again, it doesn't really matter whether you make teachers A or B. I'll just say students again, doesn't matter. Module B is teachers. First module identifier column, I'm going to go with first name. Second module identifier column, I'm going to go with last name. Now, before we generate, there's something I'd like to show you. It's a little advanced tip. I'm going to view relation details. And you see where it says first module identifier column, first name? Well, if you have a university with, say, 10,000 students, first name might not be too useful. So I'm going to go after first name and I'm going to say comma, last underscore name. I'm going to go to the second module identifier. Now that's the teacher's one, second module identifier column. We've got, it looks like I had said last name. That was a mistake. I'll go the other way. I'll say first underscore name, comma, last name. So this is going to give us a more complete name when we are assigning. You'll see that right about now. So here we go. We're going to go back, generate this relation. And if we view, let's say, the teachers module, now if I associate with a student, you can see that we've got the full student's name in the drop down. And I hope you'll agree that that is indeed an improvement on what we had previously. Also, because it's a many-to-many, we can just keep on associating. That's absolutely fine. And if we go to the students' records, everything here ties up. Look, associate with teacher, see? If you make a mistake, it's no problem. You just disassociate. There you go. So that is a many-to-many relationship. Over on the database table, if I can find it, you can see that for this, it has created another bridging table, associated students and teachers. And there it is right there. So all of that stuff gets taken care of for you automatically with this framework. It's a fantastic thing. How am I doing, folks? Well, it's ahoy! That godfather of speed coding, Simon, is here. It's ahoy to Dom Sinclair. And where has he been? The prodigal son has returned. It's Curdy Codes. Ding, 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 ding. Hi, David. Legend. How you been doing, my friend? May God bless you. And may God bless all of us. Thank you. We needed that energy. Thank you. Thank you. So I appreciate that. Let's move on and do a one-to-many relationship. The classic example of a one-to-many relationship is books and pages, right? So I'm going to create a new module here, simple module. We'll call it book here. So this will be our books module. We'll add some properties. Oh, right. So this time we'll have book title. That'll do us actually. Keep it nice and short, okay? So book title. And just because we can, let's create a URL title this time, or a URL, I can't even remember what I called it. Was it a URL column, a URL string? Sometimes you hear it being called a slug. Anyway, let's have book title, and you'll see what it means in a minute. I'm going to order by ID ascending, generate module. And now we have a very simple books module. I'm going to create some book records, and I did have a practice run earlier on. Let's do some other ones though. Let's do the Great Gatsby, like that. Let's have, oh, here's one I keep starting but I never finish it. Treasure Island. And let's have Great Expectations. I think that's right. Right, okay, so we've got 3 books, and again, we know that we're going to have a books table, no big deal. And here they are, okay? So let's do another module. New Trongate module. I'll call this one book page. Remember, we're writing in the singular here. So it's going to suggest a navigation label of book pages, submit. Not going to have an icon, and off we go. So let's have a variable character of page headline, and then a text area with page content. Now keep in mind, folks, if you were doing a real system for writing a book, this is not how I would do this. Now I'm not going to have a URL column here. I'll order by ID, generate. Okay, so here we are with our book pages. And again, this is not how I would recommend building a system like this, but I just want to show you Apologies for my watches. I just want to show you the relationships. So we create, we're going to have first page. Here we go. Let's have a second page. You can see I've had a practice run. Here we go again. And finally, let's just have a third page, okay? And of course, here we go yet again. Of course, I'm just rushing through this and making it as simple as possible. So let's do a one-to-many relationship. We create module relation. It's going to be one-to-many. Now the parent module is going to be books. The child module in this example would be book pages. The parent identifier column is going to be book title. The child identifier column is going to be page headline, and then we're going to generate. Okay, so if we now look at, let's say, the books module, let's look at the Great Gatsby. We can associate with a page like so. So we've now associated the first page. Let's just do all of them. The second, you can see that the options are changing here, and there's no more pages left, so that disappears. Meanwhile, if we go to the pages, we can look and you can see that this has been associated, and we can associate the page with another book or even disassociate. It's all been built. Over on the database, let's see what's happening here. So here's books or book pages. And if we look at books, not much has happened here. But if we look at book pages, you'll see that it has added in a books underscore ID column. All of that gets taken care of automatically. Now, that pretty much concludes module relations. The key things that I'd want to say about this is that you don't need to use it. And to be honest, some of the advanced users, like people like Simon, who's in the room there, he'll hardly ever use this. But it can be good for speeding things up if you're just wanting to map out a general architecture for a large-scale application. I can exclusively reveal that I'm considering working on a system that lets you present a database schema. So you'd present the table structure, and then it would generate all the modules from that. But that's in the future, maybe a few months down the line. What I'd like to end with is how to do custom table joins, because it's important to remember that all of this is really doing table joins in the background. But I think it would be nice if we had full control over all of that stuff. So let's go to teachers. Here's our teachers module. This is the controller file. I'm going to say function test, and I'm going to echo hi, like this. I'll do it in H1 tags. So if we head to our application, base URL, teachers/test, here we go. There's somebody outside shouting like this. You only get that guy in Glasgow. Shows up everywhere. I think he's in different places at the same time, you know. I wonder if you could hear it. All right. Anyway, let me demonstrate how to do a custom query here. So if we take, for example, a little desktop app, I'm going to open the query builder like so. And let's imagine we wanted to do let's call it an advanced custom table join. I'm going to take students. I'm going to take associated students and passports. And then I'm going to take passports. There you go, 3 tables, right? That's fairly advanced. Now, you can see we've got a student's ID. I'm going to click ID, join it to student's ID here, and choose inner join. Now see, when you're doing this, you always want to go from left to right. If you go right to left, it might cause challenges when you're drawing the joins, okay? Anyway, we're going to have passports ID joining onto ID here. Again, I'll have an inner join. The graphic pretty much shows you how this works. And in this example, I'll have the ID, first name, last name, email address, and then I'm going to swing right over here and I'm going to have the passport number. So that's what I would like to have, okay? Now, if I click on Show SQL, you can see that it gives us the SQL code for that exact query. So I'm now going to copy this SQL, head back to the controller file, and I'm going to say SQL equals like this in single quotes. Don't forget your semicolon. And I'm going to just paste in, okay? Now, let me do a little indentation for the nation, just to make it look nice. And there we have a query. So, to execute this query, we think, well, what does the query produce? It's going to produce a bunch of rows, hopefully. So I'm going to say $rows equals, and I'm going to call upon the model, which is a class that comes with the Trongate framework. Now, there is a thing called query, and I'm going to pass in the SQL. We know that our rows is going to be an array, right? An array or a list of table rows. But the question is, would you like your rows, would you like each row to be an object or an array? Now you can choose, I'll just choose object for no particular reason. I'm going to echo, well done, save it. And now refresh. You can see that the screen says well done. You're thinking, well, that was a bit of a letdown. But I can assure you, the query has run and everything went well. And how do I know? Well, if I open up the model.php file, you can see a line that says debug. And I'm going to change this to true. Save. Refresh. Back you up a little bit. And it shows us the actual query that is being executed. I'm going to copy that, take it to the database, and you can see that we can pass this straight into phpMyAdmin and it just works. Now that's all well and good, but what if we want to see the rows on the page? Well, for that, I would recommend using Trongate's JSON function. This comes with the Trongate framework. I'm going to say JSON rows, save and refresh. And if I refresh here, now you can see our rows being represented here. Let me switch off this debug. So back to false. There you go. So there's our rows in JSON format. Don't forget, you can also var dump rows. I'll do a little line here so we can see the difference. So if you want, that did not work. Anyway, not to worry. If you prefer, you can present the information like this. I don't think that that is quite as readable, but at least it shows you the different variable types. So if we were going to loop through these, we would say for each rows as row, and you could echo something like row, first name, a little space, row, last name, and we'll do a little BR, and there you go. Obviously, you know, I'm just doing this as quickly as possible. That's about it. I'll leave you with one other thought before I take a couple of questions and then run out of the door. In the documentation, now the documentation is being rewritten, but in the documentation for doing custom queries here, if I go to, now this, let me have a look here. Get where, debug, get where, custom, oh gee, it's a shame. I can't find it, and the thing is a mess. Let me just try this, custom. Actually, I think I fixed advanced custom routing. Ah, here we go, the query method. Right, so in the documentation, I have this thing that says warning. The query method offers no protection whatsoever against MySQL injection attacks. Use with extreme caution. Let me tell you folks, that is not a fault of the framework. It's not a mistake. It's not a security vulnerability. There have been well, let me just say, first of all, every PHP framework worth its salt has a feature that lets you execute custom queries. CodeIgniter, Laravel, you name it. They've all got something that does that. And so has Trongate. You've just seen an example of it. Now, what I'm saying in the documentation is, be careful when you use this, because if you're accepting user input, somebody could potentially type in malicious code and perform an SQL injection attack. Now, in our example, there's no user input coming in, so this is perfectly safe. But if we were to say where student name is Charlie, and we had a form and they could type Charlie, they could potentially type some malicious stuff and mess with your database. And that is not, I cannot stress this enough, that is not a fault with the framework. It's not a vulnerability. I would write it exactly the same way again, and I'm delighted with it. But unfortunately, some malicious Laravel developers, James Seconda was one of them, another guy was another, can't even remember his name, they've gone on the record as saying Trongate has got security vulnerabilities. This, singular, is the thing that they were talking about. And I've met a few of them in private, not all, and they've all ended up saying, oh, I got it wrong. Now, some of them won't do that because, you know, they're a little bit too arrogant to admit when they got things wrong. But if you ever see anyone saying, oh, Trongate's got a security vulnerability, that's probably what they were talking about. But it is they who have misunderstood the documentation. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. Now, do you know how to do query binding? I'll quickly show you that before we go. So let's imagine, for example, we want to search where first name is Brian, right? So the way that we would do that is we're going to say select blah, 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 blah. On that, and I'm going to add a where condition. I'm going to say where, and I'll write it down here, and I'll say where. Now, we do have to add the table name in this example. So it's where students dot first name equals, and I'm going to do a placeholder. So I'm going to say colon first underscore name. Then upstairs, I'm going to say params first name equals, and I'm going to clarify that we're talking about Brian. So now we've got a query with a little placeholder here. And instead of saying query, it's going to be slightly different. We're going to say query underscore bind. This is called query binding. This is how we do these queries safely if we're accepting user input. So we're going to say query bind. We're going to pass in the SQL. We're going to pass in the params. And once again, don't you love an object? I'm going to save and refresh. And now you can see it has selected that record. So there we go. And I think that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover here. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or suggestions? Does what I've done seem reasonably clear? I'll have, if that seems clear, just give me an ahoy, and that would be great. Anyway, that was my tutorial. That's everything you need to know about module relations and table joins with the Trongate framework. I'm delighted with it. And I have to say, as far as we know, Trongate is the only framework in the world, in any language, that gives you a free graphical query builder. I used to pay $180, I think it was $189 per year for a tool that did that. But now we have it for free, and you are very, very welcome. All right. So Dom Sinclair asks a good question. Says, if I'm right, you can't currently add additional SQL fields to a module using the desktop app. That is true. I had started it, but it became a bit messy. And there comes a point where you've got to ask, is this expenditure worth the time, or can we put our time into something better, And so that's where we are. Again, Dom, most of the seasoned Trongate developers, and I think I can use that phrase, they don't even really use the desktop app much. They'll just use it just to get started. And that's all it is. You're not obligated to use the desktop app, and you're definitely not obligated to use module relations. All right, what else we got here? It's ahoy to you, Stefan. Thank you. Thank you very much. No problem, but I can add them to the database directly. Yep, you can add them to the database directly. What changes would then have to be made for your new fields? Well, let's just do it very quickly before I go, okay? So super quick example. Let's take, well, give me an example of a field. Shout something out, Dom. Just shout something out and I'll do it manually. So one extra field for any of the modules that we've covered. I have to be at the other end of the city in 15 minutes, so this is going to be a little bit fast and frantic, but hopefully it'll work. So we'll see if we can get anything coming in from Dom. I'm keeping an eye on the chat here. So anybody, give me an example of a column you would like to add to a module. It can be date created, anything at all. Date created might be a good example. Student pet, too easy. Okay, student pet. Don't you mean teacher's pet? What a strange example. All right, student pet. Gee, where do I start with that? All right. Okay, fine. Student pet. Add two students. All right, here we go then. So the way that I would do this then, can you see the screen? Okay, so we're going to go into students. Students, I'm going to say browse. So we had a field called student pet, and if you know what that even means, well, you're a better man than me. But I'm going to go into the database. I'm going to say student pet. I presume it's a variable character. I'll make it 255. And there we go. Okay, so I've added it to the database. Pretty easy, I hope you'll agree. Now I'm going to go into students here. Now, I happen to know exactly where to go here, but I've been using Trongate for quite a while, right? You may not know how to do, the exact fields. So what you could do in that position is find in folder every instance of first name. For example, first underscore name. We know that that's a field, and I'm going to search for it. And you can see that first name appears a few different places within the module, within the students module. So I can click in and I'm looking for first underscore name. Do you see all of this stuff? That's right. And I'm just going to go right on in here, params. Now, what did we call it again? Student pet. So wherever I see something like this, I'm just going to go like this. I don't even need to know what this means. I think it's a search field. Now it looks like I'm looking for email address. Yeah, that's fine. Who cares? Email address, first name, doesn't matter. But here's our validation. So again, same type of situation. I'll just copy one, paste in. We'll change this from last name to student underscore pet. Here's the label. It would be student pet. Perfect. Now, any other instances of first name, get data from post. There you go. So that would be data student pet equals post student pet. You can add in comma true if you want to do strip tags and clean it up a little bit. Anything else? Well, I think that's that file done. I'll save it. On to the next file, create. This is our form, of course. So I'll copy last name. It's going to be kind of similar. Paste in maybe around about here. let's see. And we're just going to say student pet. Here's our label coming in. So it's student underscore pet. Then it's the variable name is, of course, student underscore pet. Enter student pet, something like that. I'm going to save. Okay, we've done that one. Next one, we've got our manage thing. Now, again, that's optional, but that's just a case of adding to a table. I'll do it. So I'll change the call span to 5. I'll go like this. Chuck it in here. So student pet, head into this one. Now, that was the third thing. So we're going to go something like that. And we're going to say student pet. And finally, we've got our show page. That's the page where we display a record. So I'll just copy one of these little beauties, paste, and I'm going to just say, whoops, student pet, like that. Okay, so I don't know why it says out. Let's pretend that never happened. I might have to look at that. That's just been added, and I'll look at that. We'll pretend that that never happened, shall we? Oh, gee. Anyway, if we go back to students, so students manage, you can see that we've now got a student pet column. I'm going to view, update the details, and this student pet, hold on a second. My email address got mixed up. Here's the label. There we go. So there's our new field. I'll do that so you can see it clearly. So student pet, let's have Jasper. There you go. And there's Jasper showing up, and there it is there. Okay, so it's all a little bit shambolic, that, and that little flaw with the out functions and irritation. I'll need to look at that. But there you have it, and don't it make you feel good? Folks, I'm going to have to hit the road. Does the desktop app, one more question, does the desktop app mark relations as being foreign keys back in the database? Great question. No, it does not. Now, you can do that. You can enforce foreign keys in the database, but it can create a lot of errors and stuff. The alternative approach is to have the code manage all of that stuff, and that's what we do. And that's actually an easier way to do things, because if you're importing millions of table rows, let's say, and you don't have all your foreign keys in place and stuff, and your other tables all matching up, you can have problems. Same with if you delete records. But if you let the code handle the relations, then you're as good as gold. Folks, I'm going to have to go because it's Friday, and I have my Friday nights during the afternoon. Long story. But I'll be back in a few hours. There's going to be a late night stream tonight. For those of you who are members, I hope you'll join me. Stay cool. Thank you for being here. And remember, when you code, always code with an expectation of success. I'll see you later.